Good morning, sir. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Posnett.
Good morning.
Yesterday, we were looking at FUJ 0015-2212. I wonder whether that can be displayed on the screen, please. And it's page 8, please. And if we scroll down, please, and look at paragraph 7.2, you remember this was the Fujitsu policy document, essentially.
Yes.
Concerning expert evidence as part of policy on the provision to the Post Office of litigation support.
Yes.
And you remember we established that it drew a distinction between evidence of fact and expert evidence.
Yes.
And I think you said yesterday that that wasn't something of which you were particularly aware at the time.
That's correct.
Okay. And you weren't aware of the process that the document said needed to be undertaken, the change control procedure, if it was a request for expert evidence?
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Can we look, please, at FUJ 402264, please? This is a similar policy document concerning security management or the security management service. You'll see that the distribution includes Sue Lowther at the Post Office.
Yes.
And can we turn, please, to page 14 and look at the foot of the page, please, under litigation support, where Post Office submits an ARQ in connection with litigation support. At the Post Office's request, Fujitsu shall, in addition to conducting that query, and then look at B, subject to the limits above, which I'm not going to read, analyse one, hold on, just go back. Thank you. Analyse one, the appropriate service desk records for the date range in question. Yes?
Yes.
2, in order to check the integrity of records of transactions extracted by that query. And then 3, request and allow the relevant employees of Fujitsu services to prepare witness statements of fact in relation to that query to the extent that such statements are reasonably required for the purpose of verifying the integrity of records provided by ARQ and are based upon the analysis and documentation referred to in another part of the document. And 4, request and allow the relevant employees to attend court to give evidence in respect of the witness statements referred to in that paragraph 3 that I've just read.
Yes.
Did you know about this policy?
I don't recall this policy. On this particular one, as you say, on the circulation list was Sue Lowther. I may have received it, I may not, but I don't recall it.
You see the way that this treats requests for ARQ data. It, if we just scroll up a little bit, oh, sorry, no, it's all right, it's there. It says that in addition to conducting the query at B1, analyse the appropriate records for the date range in question.
Yes.
When you were making ARQ requests, did you know that Fujitsu regarded itself as under an obligation, subject to the limits set out, to analyse service desk records?
I don't remember.
you were the person responsible for obtaining material from Fujitsu by way of ARQ
Yes.
requests. Can you try and help us as to what you understood Fujitsu's obligations were in terms of when you were making an ARQ request, whether it was necessary for them to analyse service desk records?
The only thing I can recall is that investigators would request Horizon data, and myself or one of the casework team would submit that request via an ARQ to Fujitsu. I don't recall all these specific details on this document.
Do you remember receiving analysis of service desk records, as opposed to so analysis on the one hand versus a summary of on the other, or the provision of the service desk records still further?
I don't recall that. The only thing I do recall is receiving discs with transaction and transaction logs and event logs.
Yes, they're from the system.
Yes.
Here we're talking about when an ARQ request is made, the facility or obligation, it doesn't express what triggers it, to analyse service desk records. That's something else. You remember the help desks?
The help desks,
Yes. So this is saying when you ask for ARQ data, there was an add-on, potentially, of an analysis of service desk records.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
If we scroll down a little bit further, please. Under 3, it reads, request and allow the relevant employees of Fujitsu to prepare witness statements of fact in relation to that query, which seems to apply to, seems to refer to transaction queries rather than the help desk stuff. Can you recall any discussion or debate over a change in approach between witness statements that spoke to ARQ data being expert evidence as against witness statements that spoke to ARQ data that were witness statements of fact?
No, I don't recall.
What did you expect the witness statements that Fujitsu supplied, which produced or spoke to the ARQ data, to contain?
Exhibit the actual data that they'd provided, i.e. the disks with transaction and event logs, and I think it was a standard statement that they used, but it was tailored to the relevant office and time frame, and commentary on whether the system at a particular branch at a particular time was working properly.
Did you expect the witness statements to contain sufficient analysis to support a case that Horizon was functioning correctly and with integrity?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. Did you expect the witness statements to contain sufficient analysis or material to support a case that Horizon was functioning correctly or with integrity?
I would have expected that, but I don't recall reading many of the witness statements anyway. I think they might have came in and just been transferred onto the investigator.
So you were post-boxing them, essentially?
Yes. And when I was casework manager, this process had been around since, 2000, I think, since Horizon came in. So it would, as far as I was aware, bedded in and business as usual. I didn't go reinvent the wheel because I thought that's what the process was.
You'll see that the sentence continues there, to the extent that such statements are reasonably required for the purpose of verifying the integrity of records provided by ARQs. So it seems to suggest that the statement needed to, in some cases, speak to the integrity of the records produced as a result of the ARQ.
Yes.
What analysis did you understand had been done, if any, on the request to produce an ARQ or produce ARQ material by Fujitsu?
I don't recall what analysis was done, and I probably wouldn't have understood it anyway.
Did you expect some analysis to have been done?
I would expect some analysis to be done if they're commenting that the system was working fine at the time at a particular branch and so on.
So if I'm an investigator and you've got a book and I say to you, Mr. Posnett, please produce the book, you can write a witness statement which says, I, David Posnett, produced the book as my exhibit DP1. Yes? Or I can say to you, Mr. Posnett, can you please produce the book and provide some analysis of what's in it, the accuracy of what's said and the truthfulness of it?
Yes.
That would be a very different witness statement, wouldn't it?
It would, yes.
What variety of witness statement, when you were essentially the ARQ manager, were you expecting from Fujitsu? The former type, just producing the data, or the latter type containing some analysis of it?
Again, from recollection, I thought it was both, i.e. the production of the ARQ data and commentary on whether the system was working.
I think you told us yesterday that you yourself wouldn't have been able to identify whether in the data provided there was sufficient information to understand whether a transaction had or had not been completed by the system or by the sub-postmaster themselves.
Yes.
And I think you said yesterday that you yourself thought that not many investigators would be able to understand that distinction and interrogate the data for themselves to see whether it applied.
That's my personal opinion, yes.
Thank you. That can come down, thank you. Now, where we stopped yesterday, that was just going back over some material that I'd thought it necessary to ask some additional questions. Where we stopped yesterday was FUJ 0015 5399. And if you scroll down, please, Frankie. We looked at the bottom half of this page yesterday, which was an email from Wendy Warham to Sue Lowther and David X. Gray about the security incident. Do you remember?
Yes.
The December 2007 report of an occurrence that went back to May 2007. And then if we just scroll up, please. On the same day, the 7th of January, at 10:54, we can see that Penny Thomas sent you that email. Yes?
Yes.
Please find attached note sent by my senior management this morning. We need to discuss urgently. I attach a proposed witness statement. I don't think we've actually got that note, but it doesn't matter for present purposes. And then if you look at the handwritten notes, that's not your writing, is it?
It's not, no.
We assume that it's Penny Thomas's. It records, I think, 2 conversations with you,
Yes.
and you say in your witness statement you don't recall the conversations.
I don't recall. the incident at all.
The first of them, on the same day, spoke to DP, which we assume is you, and I think this reads, he will liaise with his legal team and advise requirements and comments for WS, which might be witness statement.
Yeah.
And then a little later, spoke to DP at 2:30 on the same day. He had liaised with legal. They said, I think, or they want the checks for the 400,000 ARQs to be made and results returned. Their brief will need to contact counsel in the event that we find any abnormalities, discuss witness statement, will review and talk again at a later date. Yes?
Yep, I think that's what it says.
And you've got no memory of this?
I've got no memory of it, no.
Okay, but what it appears has happened is that Penny Thomas has drawn your attention to this, and I think you agreed yesterday, security incident that was serious. You've had a conversation saying, I need to get back to my legal team within Post Office.
Yes.
And you call back, or she calls back later in the day with three things. The 400,000 ARQs needed to be checked. If there are abnormalities, then their brief, which I assume means, I think that says their brief, there's something, will need to contact counsel if there are abnormalities, and then the draft witness statement will be reviewed and talked about at a later date, yes?
Yes.
And then if we go to later in the day, then what happened? FUJ 0015 5400. And look at page 3, please. Just if we look at the bottom of page 2. Thank you. So this is at 3:54 on the 7th of January, same day. Re the security incident. You contact Rob Wilson about the issue, yes?
Yes.
And we looked at some of this yesterday. Underneath paragraph 2, you cut in, starting with the words in December 2007, that which was in the Fujitsu email that we've just looked at, yes? And you say at paragraph 2, the following additional paragraphs have been inserted, page 7. I personally do not see the need for these if there are no problems identified with the data relating to the case in question. Why inform anyone about a problem we've had within the network, but possibly at only one branch, if it bears no relation or relevance? And you essentially sought Mr. Wilson's advice, is that right?
Yes, so the last paragraph on there, I'd be grateful if you could consider the above, i.e. should they include the above in statements from now on.
So should this additional language be included in the standard form witness statements?
Yes.
Afterwards, to alert people to this bug that has been found?
Yes.
If we go to page 2, please, and then scroll down. Mr. Wilson replies a few minutes later, Dave, thanks for both of your emails. So far as the addition is concerned, my view is that if we are sure that there are no incidents, then there is nothing undermining that will need to be flagged up by the defence. The incident will have no relevance to our cases, and as such could only lead to fishing expeditions if we added anything into the standard statement. And then if we scroll up, please, you forward that chain on to Penny Thomas, and you say, to note the emails below, I would say business as usual, re-witness statements, i.e. don't include the 2 additional paragraphs on the last page. If any issues materialise in due course, we can address them. Suggest the ARQs for these 4 cases are assessed first. And then page 1, please. Scroll down, please. Ms. Thomas distributes that chain within Fujitsu, saying the post office clearly do not want the specific details of this incident included in the witness statement. Yes?
Yes.
And that's a fair reflection of the exchange between you and Mr. Wilson, isn't it?
Yes, but I would say subject to their looking into the problem and what came out of that.
Well, do you actually say that? If we just go back to the chain, please, and look at page 3 first. You say, I personally do not see the need for these if there are no problems identified with the data.
If there are no problems identified with the data.
And do you say to Fujitsu, please carry on trying to identify problems with the data? I thought somewhere within those documents they were going to look into the issue that they've outlined. What would you mean if there are no problems identified with the data? What do you mean by that? What did you mean by that?
Well, I can only go by the documents I'm looking at now. I can't remember, but once they'd done their examination or assessment, if it became evident that there were no discrepancies or impact on people's balances, etc., then it wasn't an issue.
I see, I understand. So it's whether it has an impact on a balance that's important.
That's probably what I would have thought at the time.
Why did you not consider that this revelation of a bug in the Horizon estate may be relevant to individual prosecutions simply because it revealed that a bug could exist within Horizon that went undetected by Fujitsu?
Because as I mentioned yesterday, I think all systems have issues. That was my view at the time. I don't remember it. And it seems as though Rob Wilson's concurred with my view.
But the information that had been reported to you showed firstly that there had been an unseen problem that meant that part of a balancing transaction had not been recorded in the local message store. Agreed?
Yes.
And it meant, secondly, that the system had not picked that up. The system for finding faults and identifying faults had not picked that up.
Yeah.
And there had been some considerable delay.
Yes.
The issue had occurred from May 2007 onwards, I think. It was said to have been fixed in November 2008 and was not being addressed until this email exchange of January 2009. Did that not suggest to you that there were problems with Horizon, or maybe problems with Horizon, which were not being adequately or promptly communicated to you?
When I read this now, yes. I mean, in a strange way, I'm reassured that Fujitsu actually identified this and flagged it up. But I can't remember it. I can only go by what I'm reading. And it may well have been, we need to look at all of these ARQs that could have been impacted by this issue and then take it from there.
Was the existence of a bug which could undermine the integrity of data not in itself significant more generally to the integrity of data being produced by Horizon?
I would say at the time, no would have been my thought, given the email I've written. But I've forwarded it on for concurrence or review by Rob Wilson.
If we scroll back up to page 2, please. You say, if any issues materialise in due course,
Yeah.
we can address then. What did you expect to be done going forwards to see whether any issues materialise in due course?
What did I do? Sorry?
What did you expect to be done?
Well,
If any, to see whether any issues materialised in due course.
okay, so on the first page of this document with Penny Thomas's handwritten notes, Wendy Warham, who's writing to Sue Lowther, we need to work, it states, and I quote, we need to work with Pol to recheck the ARQs and reconfirm the data integrity during the period of May 07 to November 08. Penny will do this. So that's what I thought Fujitsu were going to be doing, rechecking the ARQs during that time period.
So if any issues materialise in due course does not mean if any further problems with this bug come out in the future. It means the checks that Fujitsu have already said they are going to undertake, if issues arise from those checks,
That's what
then we might need to do something.
Yeah, I don't remember it, but that's that. I agree with that summary.
Did the Post Office conduct any, to your knowledge, independent analysis of the fix that Fujitsu said that they had applied back in November 2008 to see whether it had worked?
I don't remember, but again, the first email in this chain was from Wendy Warham to Sue Lowther, the head of information security at the Post Office. And underneath the paragraph that says further action, it's mentioned education to ensure that this type of incident is raised as a major incident. I mean, I don't know what that process was.
That's a slightly different thing, I think, Mr. Posnett. That's an internal Fujitsu point that people need to be educated, not to sit on a problem and instead need to escalate it into a major incident. So there isn't a delay between 2007 and 2009.
But my view is the email went from Wendy to Sue Lowther, so I wasn't even part of that initial email. I don't know, but I'm assuming that because it went to Sue Lowther, she's got her own processes to follow or to escalate things or notify people of this incident. But I don't know.
But your view was we needn't disclose this in a witness statement? That this has happened in our witness statements?
I don't think that was my view at the time.
Well, you say, I would say business as usual re-witness statements, i.e. don't include the 2 additional paragraphs.
So don't include. So
Yes. Yeah, we don't need to mention this in our witness statements.
subject to what comes out of Fujitsu's inquiries.
Did you agree with Mr. Wilson that if you did include this, if we should scroll down to see his actual language, it could only lead to fishing expeditions?
I would turn that around and say Rob Wilson seems to have agreed with my comments beforehand.
How did you know at this time that the incident has no relevance to your cases?
We didn't know at this time.
And so prosecutions were continuing.
Yes.
The standard witness statement was going out without the additional paragraphs alerting people.
Well, I think on here it said that there were 4 outstanding. I think they were paused from what I'm reading until they'd looked into this.
The prosecutions were paused.
Not the prosecutions, the submission of the witness statement.
Oh, I see. So the prosecutions continued, but the witness statement was not signed off.
That's my understanding from this.
Can we go on, please? FUJ 0015 5409. And if we scroll down, please. If we just scroll down a little further, please. Yeah. So this is 3 days later, or 5 days later, the 12th of January, 2009. This looks like an internal Fujitsu chain, and I don't think you're ever copied in to it, but I just want to ask you some questions on what you knew about it. This is the checking process that I think you envisaged. And Alan Holmes says to Penny Thomas, I've compared your ARQs with the event data constrained as follows. 1, only the specific riposte timeout event. 2, events between the 1st of May 07 and the 30th of November 08. Events logged between 7 o'clock and 10 past 7, and events logged by counter 1. And then if we scroll up, please. And a little further, thank you. Again, internally to Fujitsu, conversation between Steve Denham and Penny Thomas on email to update you. Dave Posnett rang me yesterday to ask the status of this exercise, which he was including in his internal reporting. I told him it was still work in process, and we were hoping for results later this week, early next week, etc. Were you aware that the checks that Fujitsu were carrying out were limited only to the specific incident and to a particular date range?
That was my assumption, yes.
That they were, in the words of the email we just looked at, constrained to the specific timeout event and limited to a 10-minute window.
Yes.
And where did you get that information from, that that was the nature of the checking that was being undertaken?
From their previous emails?
Which email?
So the first email in those documents.
FUJ 0015 5399.
Yes. So the
That
email.
can just be brought up, please. And then scroll down.
So underneath the paragraph headed impact,
Yes.
again, we need to work with Paul to recheck the ARQs and reconfirm the data integrity during the period of May 07 to November 08. Penny will do this.
Yes, I was concentrating on the 10-minute time window between 7 o'clock and 10 past 7 that we just read about.
Again, I can't remember this. I don't understand what riposte is or ringers that have been mentioned. That's for Fujitsu. I look at it quite simply. There was an issue identified, and they were going to recheck the ARQs during that period and come back to me with their results that would hopefully be relayed in layman's terms.
You were part of a casework team at this time.
I'm not sure I was, because if you look at my email,
Yes.
Yeah, the title on my email is Dave Posnett, Fraud Risk Manager. So at this stage, I'd moved from casework manager into fraud risk. But
why were you dealing with it?
Well, that's a good question. I think because I've been in post office for so long, I was quite often asked to carry on with this or get involved with that. Dave, do you know people who can assist so and so? You know, I wouldn't say used and abused, but I was given extra duties above my day job at that stage.
Who took over from you as casework manager in the casework team?
So I think it was Jason Collins. He was one of the assistant casework managers. I think he became the casework.
Got promoted. Okay.
Yep. Until it moved to Salford in Manchester, and there was a different team.
But you'd moved department at this time.
I'd moved to be fraud risk manager. Yeah. And what I think has happened is I've still maintained an element of the relationship with Fujitsu.
What technical expertise did you bring to bear to be able to apply a critical eye to what Fujitsu was telling you?
None.
This says we need to work with POL to recheck the ARQs.
Yes.
What did POL do to work with Fujitsu?
Again, I don't remember it, but I think it was purely Fujitsu looking at the ARQs and then relaying the results to post office.
In this kind of thing, was there a facility to bring in technical expertise within the post office to say, look, we've got a supplier who has identified this problem, Fujitsu. They may have been slow in telling us about it. It affects prosecutions. This is serious. Or it potentially affects prosecutions. This is serious. We need to apply a critical eye to what they've done to solve the problem and to check the extent to which the data is afflicted by this problem in terms of financial reliability. Was there that kind of help available within the post office?
I don't know, but I would say yes, there probably were people who could have assisted in that respect. But there's two key things you mentioned there. One is somebody who's expert at IT that could look at this. Well, as I say, the initial emails went to Sue Lowther, who was the head of information security. So either she would deal with it or would know people who could look at it. And the other element of that, you mentioned prosecutions, I've relayed this to Rob Wilson, the head of criminal law. So in some ways, both of those areas are covered off.
You thought that was covered off?
Yeah, not from recollection, but from what I'm seeing, yes.
Can we look, please, at FUJ 0015 5421? And look at the big email in the middle, 4th of February now. Penny Thomas emails you, we're pleased to advise that our analysis of the data covering that period has been completed. The event logs have been checked for all data provided to the Post Office Limited as a result of the 195 ARQs, which fall within the time frame. 27 instances of concern were identified. They've all been fully analysed, and we can confirm that the locking caused by contention between the end of day process and a riposte checkpoint being rewritten. No transactions or balancing activities carried out at the branches were affected. The standard witness statement has been reviewed and is attached. No reference has been made to the locking issue, but minor revisions have been made. Yes?
Yes.
And so was it your understanding from this that Fujitsu had effectively checked all potentially affected cases and confirmed that this issue had not caused a transaction error in any case or an error in balancing in any case?
Yes, I'm reading these documents. That, I think, would have been my understanding.
And they say that no reference has been made to the locking issue in the witness statement, yes?
Yes.
And so that's Fujitsu deciding for themselves whether a bug in the system needed to be included by way of disclosure in a witness statement, correct?
That's what it looks like, unless they're looking back at myself and Rob
exchange.
Wilson's. Yeah,
Between you and the lawyer saying, we agree, we don't think this needs to be included.
yeah.
But all three of you, Mr. Wilson and Fujitsu, appear, would you agree, to have approached the issue on the basis of does it affect branches rather than issues of whether it said something about the existence of a bug in the system and the ability of the system to identify the bug?
I would agree with that, yes.
And not by reference to the time taken for disclosure of the issue to the post office by Fujitsu.
Yes.
Thank you, that can come down. When you're considering this disclosure issue, what test do you apply in deciding whether this needs to be disclosed to a defendant or not?
Well, it's not for me to decide whether that should have been disclosed or not. That's why I referred it to Rob Wilson.
You expressed a pretty clear view.
It was a view.
Business as usual, let's get on with things.
Well, it wasn't business as usual because, I mean, I don't actually remember it, but that to me is a specific problem that's been flagged up. That was my view. If it happened today and you asked me my view, I would say, well, we need to declare that or disclose it.
And why would your view be different?
Because at the time, without remembering it, and I mentioned yesterday that all systems, computer systems, have their glitches, issues, etc. That I thought was a localised one-off that's come to me. There's been email exchanges. Fujitsu have looked at it. I noticed I think we've just gone through there, that I've chased them for a response. So I knew that potentially it could be serious. I would imagine at the time, my major worry would be if they came back and said, 30 or 40 of these ARQs for branches, it has caused a discrepancy in their balancing. And alarm bells would have been ringing, and we'd have to look at those in depth, to see whether people had been prosecuted, etc. As it was, they came back with that there were no financial discrepancies, which was probably my focus at the time. But I understand now, given what we all know, that in hindsight, yes, perhaps that should have been flagged up and raised as another bug.
So, I mean, to take it away from the issue of a computer system, imagine a case involving, ID evidence. If you have, if you're relying on an eyewitness in a criminal prosecution who says that the suspected offender was wearing a red bobble hat, yes? And you were in possession of material which suggested that the eyewitness on a previous occasion said that the offender was wearing a blue bobble hat. Would you have to disclose that?
Yes.
That's pretty obvious, isn't it? Because it's directly about the issue concerned. Yes?
Yes.
What about if in those proceedings, unrelated to the witness's identification of the suspect, he had misidentified somebody else on a previous occasion, had said that the suspect was wearing a green skirt on one occasion and then on a different occasion said she was wearing an orange skirt. So nothing to do with the identification of the bobble hat wearing offender.
Yeah.
Would you have to disclose that?
Personally, I would. As I mentioned yesterday, the only criticism I ever received was disclosing too much information. I would say that if that particular person's got a history of getting it wrong, then yes, it's relevant to the case.
Even though it's got nothing directly to do with the identification of the suspect on this occasion?
Rightly or wrongly, I used to disclose every little bit of paper, post-note, etc. So no one could come back to me and say you haven't retained this or whatever.
And that's because it goes to the reliability of the piece of evidence that you're relying on, in that case, the eyewitness.
Yes, I would retain and reveal anything I had in relation to a case. And as I said, the lawyer who contacted me said you only need to disclose relevant things. I wasn't talking about thousands of sheets of paper, but that was the way I worked.
And thinking back, do you think you applied that approach to evidence produced by computers? i.e. something not directly relevant to the allegation that you're making, but something which tends to suggest that the evidence that you might be relying on is less than reliable?
I can't remember any instance like that where I was responsible for disclosure.
Can we move on, please, to another aspect of requests for ARQ data? Poll 00107817, please. And can we start by looking at page 3, please? This is in the context of the Seema Misra case, and we can see an email from Mr. Longman, the investigator, to the fraud team of the 14th of July, saying, can you please assist with the following 3 points? Can you help the generic fraud team email address? What was that?
So the casework team, myself, 2 assistant managers and admin staff, we had a team email address, namely the fraud team.
Okay, so this refers to the part of the casework management team?
Yes.
Okay. And then, 1, Andy Dunks of Fujitsu is required as a witness in this trial. 2, the defence will be calling their own expert to analyse the Horizon data, as the defendant is now claiming that some of the loss in the case is caused by errors with Horizon. Therefore, I'll need transaction log data covering the period 30th of June 2005 to 14th of January 2008, together with a covering witness statement.
So this is an example of when an investigator requests a witness statement, not the casework team.
Yes, and the investigator is requesting the casework team to get a witness statement.
Yes.
Yes? And does that reflect the fact that the investigator shouldn't be liaising directly with Fujitsu? It had to be routed through you?
Yes.
Your team?
The team, yeah.
The request there for a covering witness statement in relation to data for that 2.5-year period. What, reading this, would you expect if you were to pass that on to Fujitsu, the witness statement to contain? It's referred to by the investigator as a covering witness statement.
Therefore, so it should cover transaction log data covering the period 30th of June 05 to 14th of January 08, together with a covering witness statement. Well,
Now, what cover should the witness statement provide?
I don't understand that bit, but it's a witness statement that includes the production of the transaction log data during that time frame.
should it just produce them? A bit like earlier, if you remember my book example, it says here with book, my exhibit DP1,
Yeah.
or should it analyse them?
Yes,
Which of those two?
both. They should produce the logs, and if they're verifying in the witness statement that the system was working correctly, that would have involved, I would imagine, some sort of analysis.
Okay, let's see what happened to it. If we go to the top of the page, we can see that this is forwarded to you
Yes.
by Tony Jeffrey. Was he one of your caseworkers?
Yes.
Please see paragraph 2. That's the one we've been concentrating on, the request for ARQ data.
Yes.
And then if we look at page 2, please, and scroll down. You reply directly to the investigator, and you say, due to the size of the ARQ request, I cannot authorise Fujitsu to proceed at this stage. This equates to approximately 31 ARQs. We have an annual allowance of 670 ARQs, so the defence request represents quite a chunk of our quota. Just stopping there, had the defence actually requested anything?
Can we...
Go back to page 3
Yes, please.
and scroll down paragraph 2.
So,
Isn't it the investigator saying, I will need the data?
well, yes, the defence will be calling their own expert to analyse.
They're not asking for anything, though, are they, according to this?
No, but it's part of his paragraph. The defence will be calling their own expert,
Yeah.
as the defendant is now claiming that some of the loss in this case is caused by errors in Horizon. Therefore, I will need... So,
So it's the investigator, the prosecution needs the data.
yeah, yes.
Why did you turn it into a defence request in your email? Go back to page 2.
I think because the defence will be getting an expert, and it looks as though it's now citing Horizon. So perhaps at the time, I've assumed it was a defence request.
So the defence request represents quite a chunk of our data. Also, we can only request 60 ARQs a month. So this defence request could be detrimental to other prosecution requests. We have a contract with Fujitsu to acquire ARQs for our prosecution cases, and we pay for these. We do assist where we can, and where requests are reasonable in terms of our quota, e.g. police, other parts of the business, small defence requests, etc. For lumpy defence requests, we can obtain a quote from Fujitsu for the work, which will then sit outside our quota. Defence can then 1, pay up, 2, seek legal aid and pay up, 3, cancel the request, or 4, seek authority from the court to insist that the request is carried out. Aside from the costs and our quota, another reason for this approach is because many cases plead guilty at the 11th hour and nothing is found by experts in inverted commas to challenge the Fujitsu data, the usual attempts of muddying the waters. Can you consider and seek views input from our criminal lawyer in the case? Happy to discuss if need be. Yes?
Yes.
You told us yesterday that you determined the parameters of ARQ requests by reference to what the investigator wanted, didn't you?
Yes.
This shows that you didn't determine the parameters of ARQ requests by reference to what the investigator wanted, doesn't it?
So has he not requested logs for a date range?
And you said no.
Yes.
You say in the second paragraph that you do assist with, quote, small defence requests. Small defence requests are okay. Where did that come from?
I don't think it was a policy or anything. I think it's
What's a small defence request?
something that is unlikely to impact on investigation managers making requests.
You then say in the third paragraph that it's essentially the defence's job to pay for this data or get the post office to order, get the court to order the post office to undertake the work. Agreed?
That's what it says in that paragraph.
And was that your view generally? If ARQ data is required and it doesn't fit within our contractual arrangements with Fujitsu, the defence have got to pay for it.
I would say not, because of the very first line and the very last line of that email. I cannot authorise Fujitsu to proceed at this stage, is the first line, and the bottom line is, can you consider and seek views input from our criminal lawyer in the case? So whatever my thoughts or views are, the lawyer in the case would override me, as it were.
Would that be Mr. Singh?
I think it was Mr. Singh on this case.
Now, how did you find him as a lawyer?
Yeah, it was okay as far as I'm aware.
Competent and hardworking?
Well, I didn't sit with him, so I don't know how hardworking he was, but I had no issues.
And so he was the decision maker, was he, on the extent of an ARQ request that went back to Fujitsu?
If he was the lawyer in the case, then yes.
Did you not understand yourself that it was for the investigator and the prosecutor in law to undertake all reasonable lines of inquiry and, if it was necessary, obtain data and information from a third party?
Yes. What I would say to that is, again, although I don't remember this, it's I'm not aware of the full details of the case. I'm looking after the casework team, and it's up to the lawyer to say, tough, we need these for whatever reason, and then we'd do our best to get it. But, I mean...
Well, you're not doing your best to get it, are you? You're
well,
being obstructive to the getting of it, aren't you?
I said if the lawyer insists we need it, then we would do our best to get it. I mean, on this particular incident, I don't know whether... I've asked a senior manager, and they've said get a quote, or I don't know whether I've spoken to the casework team to find out how many cases have been raised in the last week or so. There was also a credence issue. So that was my view at that time, given a set of circumstances. But it's not my decision ultimately to say yes or no, or to say no to the production of logs.
If it's not your decision... Ultimately, why are you saying all of this? Why not just forward the email and say, Jarnell, over to you?
Because the investigators emailed me, I've responded to the investigator.
And I'm asking you why you've responded to the investigator saying defence should pay up.
Well, I don't know why, because I don't remember this incident. But
why should the defence pay up for data that had led to the creation of the very records that the prosecution was relying on to prove its case?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, can you try and help us? Was this the state of mind of you and your casework management team? That if we've got to get data to prove the accuracy of the very records that we rely on to prove our case, i.e. the Horizon records, it's for the defence to pay up?
I don't think that was the mindset, but I mean, the previous paragraph says we do assist where we can and where requests are reasonable in terms of our quota, etc. So it's not a case that the barriers have gone straight up, but it may well have been at that time that 3 years worth of data just seemed excessive. Hence, can you seek the views or input from the criminal lawyer?
Why would 3 years seem excessive?
Because if we're only allowed 31 ARQs a month, 60 ARQs a month, and 31 of those are going to be used up in this case, it means that an investigator who might want ARQs might have to wait till the next month to request. So,
And does that reflect your mindset at the time, that the starting point is the contract we've agreed with Fujitsu, rather than the starting point is the indictment that we have preferred against Mrs. Misra and the date range in that?
I think the ARQ from the conception horizon was more geared to the investigators. As time went on, yes, it became important for defence as well. But I, being honest, I think it was primarily for the investigation team at the beginning.
If we just scroll up, please. And again, please. We see that at 12:02, Mr. Longman duly forwards that chain to Jarnel Singh.
Yes.
At the end of the first paragraph, I've tried to order the data for the time Mrs. Misra was sub-postmaster, 3 years, but as you can see from the email from Dave Posnett, there are a number of issues. Please could you advise counsel and inform me what action to take? Yes? So that's midday on the 4th.
Yes. So I've responded to John
Yes.
to liaise with the lawyer, and John's responded to the lawyer asking him to get the view of counsel.
Yes. Can we go, please, to poll 0015 4846? FUJ 0015 4846. Thank you. And page 3, please. So we were previously looking at midday on the 4th. We're now at 11 o'clock in the morning on the 5th. You email Penny Thomas saying request for information in the Misra case. As discussed, please note the email below. And if we just scroll to page 3, please. And a bit further. And a bit further. We can see the original email from Mr. Longman to you with paragraph 2 saying, I need transaction data for that 2.5-year period. Yes?
Yes.
So back up to page 2, please. Sorry, back up to page 3. My mistake. As discussed, Penny, please see the note below. In respect of paragraph 2, I have not authorised an ARQ. Suggest the defence pay for this, either independently or via legal aid, or they can challenge at court. As such, and as per our RFI process, could I ask for a quote from Fujitsu as to how much this would cost if it sat outside the ARQ contract? I'd be grateful for a speedy response, as I need to relay back to our investigator and our criminal lawyer. So you hadn't authorised the ARQ request, had you? Line 1.
Yes. No. Well, you're correct.
And so it was your decision to not authorise or to authorise?
At this time and on this occasion, yes. Again, the bottom line of that paragraph, be grateful for a speedy response as I need to relay back to our investigator and our criminal lawyer.
So is the summary this, you'd said no without knowing how much it would cost?
I would say yes. Yeah.
And you're saying that you would suggest that the defence pay for this, either from their own money or via legal aid, or it can be challenged in court. And where did that come from? The defence had to pay?
I don't know, other than perhaps at the time there were occasions where defence had paid or other parts of the business had paid because it was the security team's budget. I don't know.
Do you understand that the data that you were seeking was data that was necessary to prove the accuracy of the records relied on in the prosecution?
I know that now.
What did you think this was at the time?
I can't remember. I don't remember the incident, so I don't know what I thought at the time. I wouldn't have known the ins and outs of the case. It may have been reading through documents that it's suddenly switched from staff members stole the money, and then it's shifted to Horizon could be the problem.
And what's the relevance of that?
Well, if it's changed so quickly from staff thefts to Horizon, it just seems a very quick change without knowing the ins and outs of the case, and an awful lot of ARQs have been requested.
So you'd be suspicious? Well, they haven't requested any. The defence at this moment haven't requested any on the information that you've got. Your investigator has asked for it.
The investigators asked for it, it would seem, based on what's happened in the case.
Yes. But he's not saying the defence have requested. He's saying I'm requesting.
I mean, I don't know whether I had conversations with him at the time.
What, that said that this is in fact a defence request?
Yeah, I don't.
Despite the terms of my email?
The email implies to me that because defence experts getting involved and it's switched from staff thefts, that's why John is making the request.
And would that be something that operated on your mind, that this is a defendant just messing around, switching defences, and therefore, if they want to mess around and switch defences, they can pay for the privilege?
That possibly would have been on my mind. I don't know. But the key thing for me there is liaise with the lawyer.
Yeah.
And if the lawyer had come back and said, tough, we need this, then we would have done our best to get it.
Can we look, please, at page 2 to the reply? Letter on the same day from Penny Thomas. If we just scroll down a little bit further. Yeah, Penny Thomas to you. In response to your request, costs will be £5,800. Yes?
Yes.
And so was that, in your view, a prohibitive cost?
Prohibitive?
To proceeding with the request?
I don't know what I thought at the time. I would imagine that be relayed to the lawyer to factor into his decision making.
Let's have a look. FUJ 0015 4851. And look at page 3, please. Letter of the 14th of August 2009 to Mr. Longman. Here's a letter I've written to the defence and copied to counsel for your information. If we go to page 2, please. Sorry, to page 4, please. To the solicitors, 14th of August. I understand from prosecuting counsel on the last occasion, defence counsel asked for Horizon data for the period during which your client was sub-postmistress at West Byfleet sub-post office. As you may be aware, the Horizon system is a product of Fujitsu Limited, and the post office has purchased this system from Fujitsu in the same way as any other company would purchase goods or services from for its business. Other than that, Fujitsu is not in any way an associated company of the post office. The request has been put to Fujitsu, and a reply has been received by a person who liaises with this company. I think that's a reference to you. The data will take some 6 to 8 weeks to produce. Additionally, your client made 107 calls to the Horizon Help Desk during her period of tenure, which equates to roughly 2 to 3 calls a month. And then the next paragraph, the retrieval of data by Fujitsu is not a free service. It's very expensive and depends upon the amount of data which has been retrieved, which is why you're requested to be very precise At that stage, a firm quotation could be obtained, and counsel will be asked to give further advice as to disclosure and payment for the service. The Post Office will not underwrite the cost if counsel considers the data irrelevant. You will, of course, be aware that the same system operates throughout the country and was not particular to your client's sub-post office. I've set out the matter above quite clearly because in the past many thousands of pounds have been spent on obtaining this type of data, subsequent to which a late guilty plea is tendered, which means that the exercise has been a complete waste of time or money. And then if we go to page 1, please. You say to Mr. Longman, good letter, I like it. Yes?
Yes.
What did you like about the letter?
I think that rather than saying, yes, we'll arrange 3 years worth of data, the legal executive has gone back via this letter asking them to explain exactly, what and why it's needed or why it's been requested.
And did you like the stuff about the waste of time and money for the late guilty pleas?
I wouldn't say I liked it, but I think that was an element of my recollection.
And in fact, you'd already got a quote of £5,800.
Right, that was before the letter went.
Yeah.
Right.
You're pulling a face,
Well,
which the transcript doesn't pick up.
Sorry, I don't remember the incident.
No.
So I haven't got my head around dates.
But do you see what's happened here? Initially, the investigator has said, I need this data.
Yes.
You said the criminal lawyer needs to advise, but there are these obstacles to giving it or getting the data.
Yeah.
At the same time, you've gone off to Fujitsu and said, what's the cost? They've provided you with the cost. And then a letter has gone back putting the burden on the defence to justify the time period. Mm-hmm. Why not just say, we've obtained a quotation, this is, the data's available, it would cost £5,800?
I don't know, perhaps I didn't forward that quotation to Phil Taylor, who wrote the letter. I don't know.
Would you agree, that can come down, thank you, that the documents that we've just looked at make it difficult for this sub-postmaster to seek to challenge Horizon data? They make their task harder.
Yes.
And I think you said that part of your reasoning would be because this defendant might plead guilty at the 11th hour.
Did I put this defendant?
No.
Right. I think at the time there were instances where people, not just audit cases, but many other types of cases, entered guilty pleas at the 11th hour.
Thank you, sir. It's 11:15 now. That might be an appropriate moment to break until past.
Yeah, of course. Can I just clarify? But by the time of the exchange of these emails, am I right in thinking that Mrs. Misra had in fact pleaded guilty to false accounting?
Yes.
So it was clear that the issue was a contest about theft. It was in that context that this debate was going on.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, thank you. 11:30, yes.
11:30, sir. Thank you. So good morning. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thanks, yeah.
Mr. Posnett, can we turn to look, please, at a document that was prepared at about the same time as the exchanges that we were just looking at in Ms. Misra's case, Poll 0014-1142. And look at page 2, please. And scroll down. We can see an email there from you to David X. Smith of the 5th of October 2009, Horizon Integrity Prosecution Case Studies. And you say, Dave, as requested, in order to address the concerns about the integrity of Horizon, I have prepared 2 case studies. What do you recall as to the reasons why you were corresponding with Mr. Smith in October 2009 over concerns about the integrity of Horizon?
I don't recall this at all.
You were, we see from the sign-off block here, a fraud risk manager at the time. Why would you have been liaising with Mr. Smith over Horizon integrity issues?
I would imagine someone's tasked me with undertaking these 2 case studies.
You say it should be noted that these cases were prosecuted whereby the burden of proof is measured beyond reasonable doubt. This differs to suspension and termination of contracts, where the burden of proof is measured as balance of probability. And then moving on, prosecutions at the foot of the page are then subject, over the page, to strict rules and regulations within the legal system, so the entire process is both thorough and fair. And then you deal with case study 1, the theft of £200,000 at Orford Road sub-post office. And you conclude that, summary points of interest if we scroll down, you say, in my opinion, some post office prosecutions where Horizon analysis is requested are merely an attempt to muddy the waters or hope that the case is dropped. This particular case involved £7,100 of taxpayers' money being spent on analysis, yet the results of that analysis were not disputed or possibly even referred to at trial. There was also no attempt to call Fujitsu individuals as witnesses and give live evidence. The investigator in the case also recollects that the Horizon kit wasn't removed. It was used by the incoming sub-postmaster with no problems reported. And then case study 2, if we scroll down. Again, this suggests, at the foot of the page, an attempt to muddy the waters or hope that the case is dropped. There is no real concern about the Horizon system as demonstrated by the defendant pleading guilty. And then the conclusion of your email under general, where Horizon data is used as evidence in a prosecution case, Fujitsu are contracted to provide a witness statement and give live evidence if requested. A significant amount of data is provided by Fujitsu, with only a few witness statements, not necessary when defendants plead guilty, and rare attendance at court to give evidence. Defendants have a right to question the integrity and data of the Horizon system, yet this avenue is not really pursued. One would think that if someone is innocent, then they would pull out all the stops to disprove the allegations against them. Post office prosecutions have a high success rate, approximately 95%, suggesting that cases are as watertight as they can be. So can you help us here? Why were you writing this memo?
I don't know, other than someone's tasked me with providing 2 case studies.
You told us yesterday that it was management, the top of the organisation, telling you lower down that everything was fine with Horizon. This is the other way round, isn't it? This is you telling management that everything is fine with Horizon, and it was a reliable basis for successful prosecutions, wasn't it?
Yes.
The message was coming up here from you to them, not down.
Yes.
Why would the provision of ARQ data in prosecutions muddy the waters?
As mentioned before, I believe there were cases where ARQ data was obtained and experts couldn't disprove or counter that there were things wrong with Horizon. And
Can you remember the cases in which experts were instructed?
I can't know. And then people pleaded guilty. So we know, obviously we know
Pleaded guilty to what?
to whatever charges they were charged with. The offences.
Did you understand the difference between a theft allegation and a false accounting allegation?
Yes.
Did you understand that some people pleaded guilty, often of the door of the court, to false accounting?
Some people pleaded guilty to false accounting.
Yes, often at the door of the court.
I still didn't catch that last bit.
Often at the door of the court.
So what does that mean?
At the last minute, on the day of the trial.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Did you understand which was the more serious? Did you have a view as to which was the more serious allegation, theft or false accounting?
I think people viewed theft as more serious, but from recollection, and I may be wrong, I think the sentencing for false accounting was similar to theft. And when I was
The maximum permissible
7
sentence
years.
of imprisonment was, I think, the same.
Yeah.
That may be a different issue. I'm not going to go into that with you. Were you aware that within the post office it was known that some people pleaded guilty at the last minute to false accounting in circumstances where the post office would offer no evidence, not proceed with the allegation of theft?
Yes, I think that was the case.
And was there a view that those people were doing so in order to seek to secure a more lenient sentence?
Possibly, yes.
You say that if you were innocent, you would pull out all of the stops to disprove the allegations,
Yes.
and that people requesting ARQ data, or some of them, were doing so to muddy the waters.
Yes.
Did that colour your view of the extent to which the Post Office should cooperate in the provision of ARQ data?
Yes, if it was an excessive amount.
And who was the judge of whether it was excessive or not?
Ultimately, it would have been the lawyers.
You mean the criminal lawyer
Yes.
for the prosecution?
Yes.
Thank you, that can come down. We'll come back to that later. I think it's right that you assisted in the obtaining of witness statements from Fujitsu in proceedings against sub-postmasters.
When you say assisted,
Yes.
I don't think I assisted.
Did you participate in any way in the obtaining of witness statements from Fujitsu?
No, I don't think so, other than requesting witness statement.
Okay, so you requested them.
Yes.
A number of emails from Fujitsu employees that the inquiry has got, including from Penny Thomas and Andy Dunks, show that they sent the witness statements to you.
Yes, in the Seema Misra case, Andy Dunks has sent me a witness statement. Can you read this and tell me what you think? And I think I've said it seems okay to me, but I'll pass it on to the investigator because he was the officer in the case.
I'm not going to go through all of them now. I'm just going to list them for anyone looking at this in the future. Cases in which Ms. Thomas and Mr. Dunks shared draft witness statements with you can be found at FUJ 0012 and then 2454, 2457, 2470, 2474, 2476, 2478, 2487, 2489, 2513, 2563 and 2540. Was it part of your role to comment on the substance of the witness statements provided by Fujitsu?
I don't think so. I don't recall getting involved in that way, although we've obviously looked at that security incident and the witness statement. But I don't think I got involved in their witness statements.
Did you see it as your role to guide or advise Fujitsu employees in relation to what should be included or excluded from their witness statements?
No, because as I say, when I was casework manager, the process had been in place for 7 or 8 years. So as far as I was concerned, that was the process. It had been long bedded in.
Can we look, please, at poll 305 2222? And can we look, please, at page 4 at the bottom? Can we see an email of the 22nd of June from Andy Dunks to you with the subject, witness statement for West Byfleet Horizon Help Desk calls. And he says, "Hi Dave, please have a look at the attached witness statement for West Byfleet Horizon Help Desk calls logged. Can you let me know if this is okay, and I will print and post it to you." Yes?
Yes.
What was the purpose of Mr. Dunks seeking approval from you on whether his witness statement from Fujitsu relating to the help desk calls in the Misra case was okay?
I don't know.
But what role were you performing here?
Well, my role should have been, he'd send the statement to me, and then I would send it on to John Longman as the investigator. He's put, "Dave, please have a look at the attached. Can you let me know if it's okay?" I don't recollect this or being asked about any witness statements, but I think in my response above, I've given a view, but it's ultimately up to the investigator to comment on the witness statement.
Let's look at how this develops. If we scroll up, please. You reply to Andy Dunks at Fujitsu, now copying the investigator, Mr. Longman, in.
Yes.
Andy, statement looks fine to me, though I've copied John Longman for his info. My only query would be that the log of 107 calls, that's a reference to Mrs. Misra calling the help desk 107 times, may need to be produced as evidence or be disclosed as unused material. If produced as evidence, then it could be incorporated in your statement now or produced in a further to statement later. I'll let John comment on this, though, as the court may be happy as it is. John, can you give Andy the green light or comment on my thoughts above? And then page 3, please. Foot of the page. Andy, the statement's fine, but the mention of 107 calls will no doubt interest the defence barrister. If possible, could you include in the statement a breakdown of the calls to cover time, date, nature of call? If we don't include it now, the defence will only request this later. Reply, 107 calls may seem a lot, but it only equates to approximately 3 to 4 calls a month over the time frame. To add the information you want is going to take 1 to 2 days of uninterrupted work to complete. So to get it completed by the 26th of June is not impossible. It will be cutting it fine. If you need the extra detail, I'll inquire about when we can get this, and then scroll up. Let's run with the statement as it is, says Mr. Longman. If the defence do want details of the 107 calls, then a further statement we needed at a later stage. Maybe you could add into your statement that the total calls only work out at 3 to 4 a month over the time period, and that this is not a high amount for a post office. And then scroll up. Okay, we'll add this to the statement, get it posted to Dave ASAP. Was this usual for the prosecutor and the investigator to influence the content of the Fujitsu statements?
I don't recall, but in that string of emails you've just read out, is there an example specifically that you can cite?
Well, the suggestion, firstly, that to add in the detail of the 107 calls, and then the suggestion, well, if it's going to take too long, let's not.
Okay, so the 107 calls that I think was mentioned by Andy Dunks, I think Mr. Longman has asked him to include that in the witness statement.
And then he's come back and said, that's going to take a while, and he said, well, all right, well, don't then.
Can we just go to that paragraph?
Yeah, sure. If we scroll down. There, Andy, let's run with the statement as it is, if the defence do want details of the 107 calls.
Right, so...
So Mr. Dunks have prepared a statement that mentions 107 calls. The emails have come through you and Mr. Longman, and the suggestion has been we need to set out what those 107 calls relate to, what they're about.
Yeah.
Mr. Dunks has come back and said, well, that's going to take a while.
Yes.
And then Mr. Longman has said, well, let's just go with the mention of them. If the defence want more, they can ask for it.
Yeah, so...
So my question is, was it usual to influence the content of prosecution witness statements like this?
I don't think it was usual, but I can't remember. I'm surprised I've been copied into all of these emails between the investigator and Andy Dunks.
Why are you surprised?
Because I wasn't the investigator, albeit I did mention...
Didn't you say earlier that it was necessary that you were the point of contact for things to be routed through you?
Albeit I mentioned earlier exactly what you've just said. So I was the liaison point, but John, as the officer in the case, I mean, from my perspective, he's saying there, let's run with it as is. But if the defence do want details of the calls, so they will be informed in one way, shape or form that there are 107 calls, then a further statement will be needed at a later stage. Yeah.
Would you expect this kind of material to go on a schedule of unused?
Yes, if it hasn't been disclosed in another way.
What other way might it have been disclosed?
Full details within the witness statement.
No, what I meant was correspondence with a witness.
Well, personally, I would say yes.
Thank you, that can come down. What were the processes within the post office to ensure that the fundamental disclosure principle of retain, record and reveal were applied to information held by the post office?
Could you repeat the first part of that question?
Yes. There's a principle in the law of disclosure called retain, record and reveal.
Yes.
Were you aware of that?
It rings a bell, yes.
What processes existed within the post office to ensure that that principle was carried into effect in post office prosecutions?
I'm not aware of any process.
Was there any process that you were aware of that existed in the security team to ensure that there was collation of information held by the post office that went to the operation of Horizon, that was relevant to the operation of Horizon?
Not that I recall, no.
I.e., when a defendant challenged the figures produced by Horizon, rather than going to Fujitsu, the inquiry started at home and said, what do we, the prosecutor, the organisation, already hold about Horizon integrity issues?
Not that I recall, no.
Was there a central repository that you are aware of information from whatever source concerning the integrity of Horizon or the lack of it?
The only thing I can think of was in the last year or two when I was in the security team, there were Horizon integrity meetings where various people around the business sat around the table every week.
Is this the weekly Wednesday hub meeting?
Yes.
I'm talking about for the period between 2000 and, say, up to July 2013.
Right. I'm not aware of a central repository, or I don't recall a central repository.
And so far as you were aware, there wasn't a data room or a file or somewhere on a server or even in hard copy, a central repository in which post offices' knowledge of errors, bugs and defects with Horizon could be stored.
Not that I recall, no.
And that could be disclosed in any prosecution.
Not that I recall.
Was there any system for informing investigators about any problems with Horizon?
I don't think there was a system in place that I can recall.
Overall, would you agree that there was not a formal, coherent approach across prosecutions as to the investigative approach that should be taken, where a sub-postmaster sought to rely on errors in Horizon as explaining the losses alleged against them?
I would agree.
Can we turn to your understanding of the Post Office's disclosure obligations? You tell us in paragraph 53 of your statement that the training provided to investigators on issues including disclosure was adequate. Yes?
Sorry, 53.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Is that a fair summary of it?
Yes.
On what basis do you make the assessment that training was adequate?
At the time, the training, I believe, I understood it, which is a good start. And I thought it covered what we needed to know at the time.
Did it include training on the importance or how fundamental disclosure was to the fairness of criminal investigations and criminal prosecutions?
I mean, I've got a vague memory that the criminal law team did a training session on disclosure, but I can't remember the details of that training.
Can you remember whether it included training on the nature of the statutory and common law duties owed by an investigator and a prosecutor?
I don't recall.
Can you remember whether it included any training on the extent to which the duties could not be delegated to a third party, that the prosecutor owed the duties rather than a third party like Fujitsu?
I don't recollect that, but that would make absolute sense to me. It's the prosecutor's duty.
Was the training theoretical in the sense of telling you about the CPIA and the common law and things like that?
I think it was, yes.
Was it ever translated into how the principles of law and the legal obligations translated into information held by the Post Office across its own estate?
I don't recall that.
I.e. how the obligation was to be discharged in fact by the post office across all aspects of its business?
I don't recall.
Did the training include training on the obligation placed upon an investigator to pursue all reasonable lines of inquiry, whether they pointed towards or away from the suspect?
I believe that was part of the training, yes.
And again, was that translated or applied to prosecutions of sub-postmasters for theft or false accounting? I.e., how do we translate that obligation on the ground in a shortfall case?
Yeah. I don't recollect the training, but I mean, for example, in the Seema Misra case, the only thing I remember about that was doing Mr. Longman a favour by knocking at addresses because there was an allegation that staff members had stolen. So he was pursuing a line of inquiry that the sub-postmistress had raised. That sort of ties in with what you were saying?
Well, I was thinking more in a case where a sub-postmaster said it's Horizon that's causing the discrepancy.
Yeah.
How the principle of the pursuit of reasonable lines of inquiry was going to be translated on the ground into some action.
I don't remember that being part of the training.
And what about outside of training, something more general, in a discussion amongst the team, one-to-ones, group meetings? Look, we've got some sub-postmasters, as they did, saying, I'm not to blame, I think it's the system.
Yeah.
What do we do? Let's adopt a standard approach across the piece.
I don't recollect those meetings of that nature. I also think I was probably too low down the pecking order to come up with those sort of ideas.
Well, did you see the fruits of any such ideas? You know, something like a side of A4, or maybe even stretching to two sides of A4, saying, look, sub-postmasters are starting to blame Horizon here. This is what we need to do when they do so.
I mean, I can remember sub-postmasters are starting to raise Horizon. I don't remember this is what we should do.
Can you remember whether the training included any guidance on what the law required and whether the law's requirements could be abrogated or watered down on cost grounds?
I don't recall, no.
Or the extent to which the contract that the prosecutor had already made with a third party could be used as a relevant consideration in deciding whether to seek information or not?
I don't recall that either.
Did you think that the contract could be used in that way? We've already made a contract with this person, this organisation, which limits the amount of material we can get from them a month and a year. There was, of course, a facility to get material outside of that, but we want to try and stay within the contractual limits. Are we really allowed to use that as a limitation on the disclosure that we seek from them?
I would say no.
Now, I think if we turn to paragraph 68 of your witness statement, which is on page 20, it'll just come up on the screen for you. The foot of the page. The request, that's the Rule 9 request we sent you, also asked me about the role played by Gareth Jenkins in criminal prosecutions. I recall Gareth Jenkins provided witness statements to investigators, including exhibits containing Horizon data that Fujitsu had supplied in response to ARQs. My understanding of the role of Gareth Jenkins was that he provided his knowledge and experience concerning Horizon. I recall I viewed him as an expert witness, since he was known to have expertise. And then this, but I did not know the rules governing independent expert evidence.
Yes.
That can come down, thank you. Does it follow from what you said in that last line there in paragraph 68 that you had not been trained and you had no knowledge or understanding of the law on the responsibilities of a prosecutor when they instructed an expert?
I had no training on that. That is correct.
What about knowledge or understanding?
Well, my knowledge and understanding in that scenario is that Gareth Jenkins was, how can I say this, expert with a small e, because he knew about Horizon. He had the knowledge and experience to do his witness statements. It was pointed out to me that an expert witness, perhaps with a capital E, is somebody who should be independent in coming up with a statement, whether it falls to the benefit of the post office or the defence, or it does or it doesn't.
Who pointed that out to you?
My solicitor.
You mean in the context of these proceedings?
No, as a general. But because I didn't know, that's why I put that in my witness statement.
I see. When you say your solicitor told you, you mean your inquiry solicitor?
Yes.
Right. I don't want to know anything more about
No, that's fine.
that. At the time, did you understand the distinction that you've just made?
At the time,
Yes, back in 2009, 10.
as I say, I thought Gareth Jenkins was an expert because of his knowledge and experience of Horizon.
I think it follows from the answers that you gave that you didn't know that instructing an expert gave rise to some specific disclosure obligations on an investigator and a prosecutor. Is that right?
Sorry, engaging an expert.
Yes, instructing an expert gave rise to some quite specific disclosure obligations on a prosecutor.
Yes, I guess.
Did you know that?
Well, I didn't know that, no.
Okay. So, for example, the prosecutor was required to bring to the attention of the defence and to the court any material which it was in possession of that was reasonably capable of undermining the expert's opinion.
Yes.
You didn't know that at the time?
I can remember that phrase, anything that undermines the prosecution or assists the defence, yes.
Specifically, that was a general understanding you
Yes.
had for disclosure obligations,
Yes.
rather than being in the context of the instruction of an expert.
Correct.
What about the existence of a duty? Did you know this, that communications between the investigator stroke prosecutor and the expert for the purposes of preparing the report of the expert fell to be considered for disclosure?
No, I don't recollect that.
Did you understand that there would be a duty to record the existence of such communications on a schedule of unused material?
Well, I can only go back to when I was an investigator, and I would disclose everything I had,
Okay.
which would have included something like that if that was the case for me.
You told us in paragraph 53 of your witness statement that you considered that training on issues including taking witness statements and evidence gathering was adequate. And you told us in paragraph 68 that you didn't know the rules governing the obtaining of expert evidence.
Yes.
Those two things don't seem to sit very well with each other.
Well, I think my comment on adequacy was based on the training at the time. Back then, yeah, I thought it was adequate. Now, sitting here, perhaps it wasn't so adequate.
I see. Can I turn to the prosecution's approach to disclosure in Mrs. Misra's case and start by looking at Fujitsu 0012-2794? And start by looking at page 2, please. And scroll down, please. Thank you. This is correspondence that you're not copied into at this moment between Jarnail Singh, who you know, and David Jones, who was head of legal in Fujitsu. Do you remember that name, David Jones?
I don't.
Okay.
But that David Jones has cropped up on another document.
Yes, it has. If we look, this is February 2010, 5th of February, and the email from Mr. Singh to Fujitsu, Gareth Jenkins and Penny Thomas are also copied in. At paragraph 3, where it says in the introduction, on first glance, points 2 to 4 haven't been answered, which I reproduce below. And then 3, when Gareth completes his statement, could he also mention whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of? If none, could this be clarified in the statement? And so to put this in context, what had been requested was a witness statement from Gareth Jenkins that included, quote, mention of whether there were any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of, and that hadn't been addressed.
Yes.
In the draft statement. And then if we scroll up, please. If we scroll up. Thank you. The reply from Mr. Jenkins in relation to 3, the introduction is brief responses below, but I'm not sure I should put them in a witness statement. To 3, this is, are there any known problems with Horizon? This is where I'm reluctant to make a clear statement. Just stopping there. Would you think that met the test for disclosure on an unused material schedule?
What, this particular email? Or?
Yes, this exchange.
Yes.
And why would you think it would meet the test for disclosure?
Well, again, if I was an investigator, I would disclose everything and anything. I mean, if I look at the specifics, bear in mind, I don't think I've seen this string of emails. It's
when you say that, you've seen them now for these purposes, you mean
yes.
at the time?
Yeah. To me, especially here and now, it's relevant to the case and many other cases.
I.e. that the distinguished engineer at Fujitsu, in some senses, a person regarded as possessing the greatest expertise to speak to the operation of the Horizon system, was reluctant to make a clear statement that, if we scroll down a bit more, there are any known problems with the Horizon system.
Yes, so...
And that's pretty significant, isn't it?
Yeah, so, well, keeping it simple, the lawyer has asked specifically whether there are any issues, and Mr. Jenkins has just responded he's reluctant to get into that, by the sounds of it.
And so I think in the answer before last, you said this ought to have been disclosed not only in this prosecution, but all prosecutions after, certainly after the exchange occurred.
I would think so, yes.
Going back up to the reply, please. Mr. Jenkins continues, I'm aware of one problem where transactions have been lost in particular circumstances due to locking issues. When this happens, we have events in the eventing logs to indicate that there was an issue. And whenever we provide transaction logs to the post office, we check for any such events. In the case of West Byfleet, we've not provided any transaction logs and so have not made these checks. Again, would you say that that part of the exchange met the test for disclosure, that Fujitsu it knew of a known problem of lost transactions.
Yes.
And again, in other prosecutions too.
Yes.
Can you recall ever being shown this exchange?
I don't recall it, no.
If we scroll up, please. And again. We can see that the exchange went within the post office to Mr. Singh alone. Can you see that?
Yes.
You don't recall Mr. Singh passing this back on to you?
I don't recall it, no.
Thank you. Can we move on to a similar topic in Mrs. Misra's case? Poll 305-5059. Can you see, this is an exchange between Izzy Hogg, who's Mrs. Misra's defence solicitor, and Mr. Singh in July 2010. And she says, as a result of a meeting that took place between Charles McLachlan and Gareth Jenkins, we need to have, and then it's the third bullet point, access to system change requests, known error log, and new release documentation. Would you have expected a defence request for such disclosure to have been routed through you, given that it relates to material held by Fujitsu?
Not at this stage. Not only was I not the casework manager, I may well have moved on from being the fraud risk manager into my next role, which was accredited financial investigator. Unless, and this goes back to what I said earlier, I seem to be involved in a lot of projects and tasks related to all sorts of things.
In your time, and I'm talking about before 2013, had you ever heard of something called a known error log?
Not that I recall, no.
Did you know of the existence of a species of document created by Fujitsu that recorded known errors with Horizon?
Not my recollection, no.
If you had have known of a series of documents that contained, written by Fujitsu, which recorded known errors with Horizon, would that have been something which you had wished to consider for disclosure?
Now, yes. Then, I don't know.
Why do you think you might not have wanted to look at the material if it was a series of documents concerned with known errors with Horizon?
Because back then, I don't know whether I would have understood the magnitude of something like that. Is it relevant to cases and so on and so forth? I just don't know back then.
Can we turn to poll 305-5113? And if we scroll down, please. This is an email exchange between Mr. Longman and Mr. Singh. This is the response I've got back from Penny following the defence solicitor's email. I've had a discussion with Gareth. It was agreed that Charles will provide notes reflecting the discussion. His views on the email string are, that's Gareth's views on the email string are, Then if we look at 3, system change requests, basically that's Mr. McLachlan, Professor McLachlan, was asking to look at all the system faults. I suggested that as we kept all testing and live faults in the same system, and that there were around 200,000 of them, this wasn't going to get him far. He then suggested looking at the system changes and would like to know all changes that have happened to the system. I don't think this will help. I don't know how practical it is for Fujitsu's release management to provide that. I think all we can do is ask the question. You see the mention there of 200,000 or around 200,000 live faults in the system.
Yes.
Was that a figure which was ever revealed to you?
I don't recollect that at all. I mean, reading that, it sounds as though Mr. Singh knows more about Horizon and the relationship with Fujitsu than I did.
Would you consider that this material might fall for disclosure?
Yes.
Thank you, that can come down. Can we turn to the topic of unfolding knowledge of bugs, errors and defects in Horizon? And can I start, please, by looking at poll 0013 9733. This is a document which I think is written by you.
Yes.
And you say, I conducted torch visits to a number of branches on the 11th of April 2013. Can you tell us what a torch visit was, please?
Yes, so I think we discussed yesterday, the last job I had in post office security was a combination of investigation and security. Torch visits were so named because we would visit branches to shine a light on their security procedures, i.e. did they let us in without ID, was the safe door flapping in the wind and stuff like that.
So it was primarily aimed at physical security?
Yes.
And you say, whilst at Westerham, the manager just happened to show me a real-time anomaly. He had a customer in front of him who wanted to post a small standard letter by recorded delivery. The manager explained it should be £1.70. You checked that was correct. I associate 3 photos which show, unfortunately on the copies we've got, it doesn't actually show it, we can't see it, but one, the Horizon system, 11th of April, screen clearly shows the weight of 25 grams in the top right-hand corner. However, there are no options displayed concerning a first-class signed-for letter at £1.70. Instead, the signed-for options start at £3.70 for a second class for a small parcel to £6.75 for a first-class signed-for medium parcel. The manager said he has had problems in relation to this for the past few days, has to reboot the terminal to rectify, which takes a number of minutes to perform. He's retained letters and asked customers to pop back for their receipts, etc. And then scroll down. And again, please. The manager has written, Horizon terminal shows a high value in recorded delivery rebooted, and then scroll down. On the 9th of April, the manager has written a similar entry called helpline. Yes?
Yes.
And so this wasn't really about physical security that you were writing this note?
No, security, physical security was the reason for the visit.
Yes, but whilst you were there, you happened to see a Horizon anomaly.
Yes, and around this time I attended the weekly Horizon integrity meetings. And to put it bluntly, if we came across anything Horizon related that's a potential issue, we were to bring it back to the table, which is why I captured all these photographs.
I see. You've anticipated my next question. Why was it that you were reporting back? It was because you were attending the Wednesday hub meetings at this time.
Yes.
And so anything to do with Horizon problems, you scooped up and reported back.
Yes.
But this was something observed by you in front of your very eyes.
Indeed, yes.
And what impact, if any, did this have on your impression of the reliability or integrity of Horizon?
I thought it was another glitch, which, as I mentioned yesterday, I think all computer systems have from time to time. In terms of financials, I think I've put on here somewhere that if the icon's not there, it won't affect the balance because you just can't choose the option because there's no icon. But it is a glitch, and that's why I captured it.
Can we go back in time then? FUJ 0015 4859. Thank you. This is one of a series of notes of bi-monthly meetings with Fujitsu. This one, you'll see that the date is the 3rd of November 2009, covering the period of September and October 2009. Yes?
Yes.
And can you remember what the purpose of these bi-monthly reviews was?
They weren't always bi-monthly. There could be a few months, but it was basically a catch-up meeting between Post Office casework and Fujitsu, just to sense check where we were with ARQs, notify them of prosecutions where their data had been used.
So it was specifically about the interface between Post Office on the one hand, Fujitsu on the other, in relation to investigations and prosecutions?
Pretty much, yeah.
And who led the meetings?
I don't think either of us led the meetings. Normally it was myself or my predecessor and Penny and or Pete Sewell. On this particular occasion there are more attendees because thankfully I'm handing over the responsibility of the relationship to other people.
And can we look at page 2, please? And can you see the heading Horizon Integrity?
Yes.
Dave, and I think that's you in context, explained that there had been recent press coverage which questions the integrity of Horizon data. This had been founded by Lee Castleton, and articles had been seen in Computer Weekly and The Grocer and had featured on the Welsh BBC News. A team had been formed to review these accusations. Yes?
Yes.
So this is at the time when Computer Weekly was generating, would this be right, significant publicity for the claims that Horizon lacked integrity?
I believe so, yes.
And that had been repeated, as you say here, on BBC Wales.
Yes.
And in The Grocer magazine.
Yes.
And so would this be right by at this time in the autumn of 2009, both sides of the House, both the Post Office and Fujitsu, insofar as they were engaged in the prosecution process, would have been aware of the publicity about Horizon integrity coming from these three sources?
I would say so, yes.
And you say that there was a team formed to deal with the allegations or accusations.
Yes.
Was that a team at the Post Office, at Fujitsu, or did it involve both organisations?
I don't remember it, but I would imagine it was a team from the Post Office.
And can you help identify the members of the Post Office team that had been formed by autumn 2009 to deal with or review the accusations?
I can't recall the team in 2009.
Can you assist whether Mr. Scott was involved in it?
I don't know.
Mandy Talbot,
I don't know.
Rob Wilson,
Yeah, I don't know.
John Elsing.
I don't remember this. I can't say who
Okay.
was in this particular team.
This records you as saying that the team had been formed to review the allegations. Can you recall what the review was to look like, what it was to consist of?
No, unless it concerns, I think, what we discussed earlier, or yesterday rather, where I made sure that Rob Wilson was kept in the loop on those particular meetings. I don't know whether this team is that sort of team or the same team.
Was there any discussion, to your knowledge, of whether an independent review was necessary and should take place in the light of the allegations or accusations?
Not to my knowledge, then.
Now, at this time, out of the people concerned, at least you and Mr. Wilson would have been aware of the correspondence earlier in 2009, which referred to errors impacting the ARQ data,
Yes.
and that had involved what was described as an unseen error by Fujitsu.
Yes.
How did that knowledge inform your reaction to these accusations that were being made in these three sources?
I don't know whether that security incident would have been factored into my thinking in relation to these articles.
You had essentially been assured by Fujitsu at that time.
Yes.
Did anyone at this time, later in the year, query whether the Post Office should continue to have confidence in assurances that Fujitsu gave as to the integrity of Horizon data?
Not that I recall, no.
Did it at least cause anyone, to your knowledge, to pause and think, to what extent can we continue to rely on assurances from Fujitsu of the type that we got in relation to the security incident?
Not to my knowledge, no.
To your knowledge, did anyone think we should reflect and pause, potentially pause, prosecutions?
I don't believe that was ever communicated to me, no.
Do you think it was ever considered, to your knowledge, by anyone?
To my knowledge, I don't know whether it was considered by anyone.
Did you, for your part, consult with anyone else about these accusations that were being made?
Not that I recall.
I mean, if we look at the cast list at the top on page 1, who's the senior Post Office individual there?
Mark Dinsdale.
And why, there's a lot of managers there, why is he the most senior?
So I'm relinquishing the role of the casework manager, or more specifically, the Fujitsu relationship element of the casework manager. Mark Dinsdale was, in effect, I believe, going to be the new casework manager, and Jane Owen reported to him. So I think the pair of them were going to take over the relationship.
This discussion was occurring right at the same time as the development of Horizon Online was working at pace, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Were you aware of the development of Horizon Online in autumn 2009?
I can remember Horizon, I can remember Horizon Online, and I can remember Horizon Next Generation. I don't know what the differences are between them, other than they were updated versions of Horizon. I don't know the dates or the specifics of them.
Was there ever any discussion that you were a party to or that you heard about concerning whether revelation of bugs, errors and defects in the existing Horizon, legacy Horizon, would have or might have implications for the development of Horizon Online?
I don't recall, and that's something I think I would have remembered.
Were you later aware of something called the ISMAE report?
Only through watching these proceedings, yes.
Going back to page 2, please, and looking at the Horizon Integrity section, a team had been formed to review these accusations. What did you later learn about what that team did, if anything?
I don't recall.
Were you told about the ISMAE report at the time? It reports in August 2010.
I don't believe I was, because when I saw Mr. Ismay giving his evidence, I think that was the first I knew about. And from what I can gather, it was the chief executive who asked him, who was a senior manager, to do the report. And again, I'm probably a bit too far down the pecking order to have had sight of it.
Is what you are referring to here a team being formed to review the accusations, in your view, what ended up being the ISMAE report?
I don't know.
What happened to that team that you're referring to here?
I don't know. I don't know what the team is.
Were you interested in the work of the team and what it made of the accusations?
Interested? I'll be brutally honest with you, I probably wasn't interested because I couldn't wait to get out of that job.
Why couldn't you wait to get out?
Because it's a job I didn't want to go into, didn't like it from day one, and was pleased when I did get out.
There's a reference to an article in the Grocer here. Can we look, please, at poll 0016 7138? And if we just scroll down, please. Can you see an email here from you on the 1st of February 2010 to Michelle Graves, Mandy Talbot, John Longman, Jane Owen, Andy Hayward? Another article from the Grocer Horizon.
Yes.
And you say, Michelle, Mandy, this ties in with previous correspondence I've submitted, in that defence teams can and do challenge Horizon in prosecution cases. John Longman is the investigation manager in this case. I've been assured previously, Dave Smith, that our criminal law team are being kept updated regarding questions surrounding Horizon integrity. They're obviously aware of this case, but can you confirm they continue to be updated on wider issues? Then if we can just look at the Grocer article, poll 0005 3935. And I think it's right-hand side, halfway down, a question mark. Yes. A question mark over Horizon's IT. There is just room here to report that Computer Weekly, which has been closely following the problems sub-postmasters claim to be suffering over their Horizon accounting system, says that, quote, a sub-postmistress accused of theft from the post office has had her case postponed to allow experts time to investigate the accounting IT system at her branch. The report adds Seema Misra, postmistress at the West Byfleet Post Office in Surrey, is accused of one count of theft of £74,000. She claims the IT system may have caused the deficit. So if we just go back to the email, please. Poll 0016 7138. And scroll down, please. You say this ties in with previous correspondence. John Longman's the investigation manager. I've been assured previously by Dave Smith that our criminal law team is being kept updated. But why in February 2010 were you involving yourself in this?
Is mine the first email in that chain, or?
If we scroll down. Keep going. There's an email from Michelle, who is from the executive team correspondence team, to Mandy Talbot and Martin Humphreys. And then if we scroll up. It's not completely clear if we just scroll down in between. How you got that? Can you see that there's no forwarding or reply to you?
No. I don't know.
Anyway, looking at the substance, if we scroll up, please. You say I've been assured previously that our criminal law team are being kept updated, and that assurance had been given by Dave Smith.
Yes.
In what circumstances had Dave Smith given you that assurance?
I don't know what circumstances.
Was Mr. Smith that you're referring to there the head of IT?
I think he was, yes, the head of IT and change, maybe.
And how frequently did you discuss allegations concerning Horizon integrity with the head of IT and change?
I don't recall discussing with him at all, but clearly if I've been assured by him previously, there must have been some engagement. And I think the thrust of this goes back similar to what I said yesterday, that I please keep Rob Wilson in the loop. And on this particular occasion, I've been assured by Dave Smith that our criminal law team are being kept updated or in the loop.
And can we scroll up, please? It's forwarded on to counsel in the case, Mr. Tatford, and the solicitor, Mr. Singh.
Yep.
And again, can you just help us why you were involved in this if you had moved on and, in fact, were anxious to move on?
Can we just scroll down one?
Yep. And again. And again.
No. So my first email, it says another article from the, I don't know, because I don't seem to have been copied in on Michelle Graves' email.
She sent it to two people.
Yes, Mandy Talbot and Martin Humphreys.
And then if we go back up,
If we go back
suddenly
up,
you're replying to her and lots of other people too.
Yes, I mean, but I didn't get the email, or I wasn't copied in on the email. But I've sent it to Michelle Graves and Mandy Talbot, John Longman, who's the officer in the case, which seems logical. Jane Owen, because she was the new casework manager. Andy Hayward was my senior manager. So I think I've copied in the relevant people. But I don't understand that because I wasn't on the circulation in the previous email.
No. Can we turn, please, to poll 0014 1142? And if we just Scroll down, please. And again. Can we see the email that we looked at earlier from... sorry, if we keep scrolling. And again. Yeah. Can we see the email that you sent to Mr. Smith?
Yes.
On the 2 case studies? Yep. I'm just going to pick that back up. If we go back to the top, please, to page 1. At the top of page 1. Can we see an email there from you to Sue Lowther and Dave King concerning Horizon integrity?
Yes.
And you say, Sue, Dave, below details individuals that were invited to the conference calls, not all participated. There have been 2 conference calls. It was envisaged that another would occur the 16th of October, that's 2009, but that didn't materialise. Dave Smith phoned me last week, asked me a few questions, and indicated that Alan Cook is asking for more robust defence of Horizon. I believe the press office are drafting a response to the challenges we've had based on the responses by conference call participants. I also associate 2 emails that were sent by some other people, and I associate the case studies requested by Dave Smith that concern 2 prosecution cases. Yes?
Yes.
So this records you having a conversation with Dave Smith. Yes?
Yes.
Dave Smith phoned me last week.
Yes.
And again, is that David X. Smith, the head of IT?
I think so.
Rather than the managing director of the company?
I don't recall the managing director of the company, Dave Smith.
No. You, in this email, say that Dave Smith asked me a few questions and indicated that Alan Cook is asking for a more robust defence of Horizon. Can you remember who Alan Cook was at this time?
I think he was the managing director of the post office.
Correct. So you were being told by the head of IT that the managing director of the company wanted a more robust defence of Horizon?
It looks like it, yes.
Why was Dave Smith telling you about it?
I've got no idea.
Was it because you were a person who was going to be carrying that request into effect?
What, a robust defence of Horizon?
Yes.
I don't think so, but I don't remember this.
Can you help us here? I mean, presumably it's not every day of the week that you get a very senior member of the organisation, the head of IT, a member of the executive team, telling you the managing director's views.
No, it's not it's a rare occurrence, but...
Yeah, you don't hear every day, or very often,
No.
from the MD of the whole of the post office.
Correct, but I can't remember it.
What was going to be done more robustly to defend Horizon?
Dave Smith asked me a few questions and indicated that Alan Cook is asking for more robust defence of Horizon. I believe the press office are drafting a response to the challenges we have had based on responses by conference call participants. I don't know what he was going to do or how he was going to go about it.
Do you know why the managing director of the post office was asking for a more robust defence of Horizon, as opposed for seeking neutrally an explanation of the issues and their impact on, amongst other things, prosecution cases?
I don't know, but that sounds similar from my perspective to the Rod Ismay report and the circumstances about him drafting that report.
But again, why were you being told this? Were you one of the lieutenants that were being asked to be called into action to make that more robust defence?
I don't know. All I can do is repeat what I've said earlier, that I seem to be a go-to person to assist with this or help out with that or point people in the right direction here and do many, many other tasks. But I mean, I was nowhere near the pay level of these sort of people.
The long email that we read that's on pages 2 and 3 of this chain, the one that, the muddying the waters email, I'm going to call it, was the provision of that kind of information by you to more senior members of the Post Office part of an exercise in being more robust about Horizon?
I don't know, and I don't think so.
Why were you providing information that sub-postmasters who seek to blame Horizon for their losses were just muddying the waters?
I think that was my honestly held view at the time.
But why were you being asked to regurgitate it?
I don't know.
Well, isn't it so that it could be deployed as part of a more robust defence of Horizon?
That could be an element of it. But it, yeah, I don't know.
What was essentially what was happening here, you being tasked to produce essentially rebuttal evidence by way of these case studies in response to the adverse publicity in Computer Weekly, BBC Wales and The Grocer in autumn 2009?
The case studies could be relevant to that, but I don't recall them.
Were you asked ever to conduct a substantive investigation or review of the integrity of Horizon?
I don't believe so. I don't think I'd know where to start.
You produce some material saying that in some prosecution cases, the raising of Horizon was done to muddy the waters or in the hope that the case is dropped. What evidence did you examine to satisfy yourself that that was in fact the case?
I don't recall. I think it was a general view that a number of branches requested Horizon data. Nothing was found to be wrong with that data, and guilty pleas were entered.
Can we look at page 2 of the email, please? And if we, just look at the top of page 1 so we can just see. Michelle Graves to David X. Smith and a group of other people, yes?
Yes.
Says, following on from Friday's, and including Rod Ismay, says, following on from Friday's conference call, I was asked to look into who the sub-postmaster was behind the Post Office Victims website. I understand this to be Alan Bates, whose contract was terminated in 2003. Mr. Bates also features in Rebecca Thompson's article from Computer Weekly. You may recall from our past communications, she raised a challenge to the system earlier this year via Brian Binley. If you've not already done so, I draw your attention to computerweekly.com and enter Post Office Horizon into the search facility. This will take you through to articles on Horizon, and most notably the two latest of the 10th and the 28th of September. Former is from David Jones MP, saying he's considering a Commons debate, the latter around the potential setting up of a sub-postmaster action group. Sub-postmasters are invited to email Rebecca or Mr. Bates. Potential interest from BBC Watchdog is also mentioned. And so this was Miss Graves for the executive team. She's the executive team's correspondence manager, circulating information about Mr. Bates and his website by the reporting by Computer Weekly and by potential interest from the BBC. Yes?
Yes.
and some investigation, it seems, had gone on into identifying Mr. Bates as being behind the Post Office Victims website. Yes?
Yes.
This was circulated to a number of people, if we scroll up. Some of whom are familiar to us. Can you help us with those that aren't? Alana Renner.
No idea.
Bob Booth.
No.
Hayley Fowle.
No.
Jeremy Worrell.
No.
Peter Johnson.
Name rings a bell, but I can't say what it was.
Richard Stevenson.
No.
Adam Martin.
No.
And Philippa Wright.
No.
You're included in this distribution list here, yes?
Yes.
Why were you included amongst this company here?
I don't know because I don't recall it.
Did you participate in Friday's conference call that's referred to?
I don't know.
If we scroll up, please. A further email here is the URL of the website. I have a hard copy of the articles. And then up again, please.
Sorry, was I included on that one?
If we scroll down. I don't think you were, but you seem to have got it because if we scroll up, you forwarded it.
Yeah.
So presumably there is some separate email somewhere of this being sent to you, and you've cut it into this email chain. You say in the body of the email, I associate it.
Yeah.
You say that there had been 2 conference calls. Can you recall whether Fujitsu were ever invited into those conference calls?
I can't remember this incident, so I certainly couldn't say whether Fujitsu were part of the calls.
Can you recall whether there was any discussion of the need for an independent investigation in the light of this publicity involving Computer Weekly, BBC Wales, potentially BBC Watchdog, the Grocer magazine, and an MP?
Not that I recall, no.
Can you recall what was done to satisfy the managing director's request that there should be a more robust defence of Horizon?
I don't recall, no.
Sorry, Mr. Beer, it's a very minor point, but just so I'm not missing what's happening here, the email that Mr. Posnett forwarded, he does appear, does he not, next to Mr. Halbert as a recipient?
Oh, quite right. I'd completely missed that. We'd both missed it. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, so mystery solved. You forwarded it because you received it.
Yes.
So that is an appropriate moment because I was moving on from this correspondence to a new topic. I wonder whether we might break until 5 to 2.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. 5 to 2.